So David, take us back before real estate. What were you doing, and how did you actually get into real estate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how far back you want to go. I think one of the cool things of our journey, our story was, growing up, my mom worked 4 jobs. We didn't see her a whole lot. My parents were separated. And so I think about like what I learned or going to get a job. Cheated and got a job when I was 13. I remember driving her car that the church had given us to the grocery store when I was 12. Things that we wouldn't let our kids dare get away with.
Yeah.
But I remember doing that and starting to work at an early age and really picking up on the grit that she displayed in attempting to clothe us and put food on the table, and the passion that she had for, while she might not have been there, she paved a great path for what grit and determination and I don't care if it's hard, you get up and do it kind of attitude. And I think that played well for me. I probably was wilder than most. And so as I went through, I had a knack for academics. And so found that I could excel in school and things like that. And it was always kind of this tale of two sides, right? I was a rebellious teenager with no oversight. So you can imagine the trouble I could have got into. But I also had this theme of honors classes and math and all these things. And so I say all that to I was the first kid in my family to go to college. But what no one told me when I went to college was that when I got out, I still had to start at the bottom, right? And so a lot of my journey, I've had to navigate or had the opportunity to navigate through really uncharted waters. And I'll say for anybody else that can relate to that or has had this transition in their life, it's really where coaches, I think, are just so invaluable to have someone to bounce ideas off of, to be that voice of reason, as you're growing your business. So got out of college, had a few jobs, hated working for other people. I'd always bartended, waited tables. So when I got out of college and sat in a cubicle and said, hey, I got to work this many hours for this type of income for the rest of my life, I just wasn't happy. My wife and I actually used to have resume Sunday, right? She got so tired of my fussing. My wife's been my biggest cheerleader. And we'd have resume Sundays, right? And we would go through back then, it was a yellow pages, and we would just fax. I'm showing my age now. I'm not that old, but we would literally find ways to get my resume to as many companies as possible. And I remember the moment of just had a decent job. I was 22 years old, I think 22, 23 years old. And we were driving back from a vacation in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And I remember the exact moment where I just said, I'm supposed to go get into real estate. And I had a rich aunt in Memphis, and we drove down there, went down there every 2 weeks, every summer. And she was the first female president of her board. She had a brokerage there, very successful for her era. And I was like, well, that's how you make money, right? I mean, no one else I knew had money or was successful. And so I thought, well, she did it through real estate. That's how I can do it. And so that was really what propelled me into it. I remember thinking at 23, though, that I needed insurance and I needed all it. I don't know why I needed it at 23. Nothing was broke. You just think you're married, you're starting a family, you're supposed to have these things was my mindset.
Yeah, right.
At the time. And so it was a bit of a jump, right?
So I mean, I kind of pick up so you're kind of this punk academic, a little bit of this rebellion and the academic. So we'll call you punk academic. I hope that is okay with you. No, and you brought up the importance of coaching. So kind of I've got to imagine as a somewhat rebellious individual who also had this academic ability, were you stubborn? I mean, were you coachable in those early years, or how did you come to this discovery that you had enough of the being chained to the desk and you know what, I'm actually going to try something else? Was that self-discovery, or were you being coached at that point?
No, I was not being coached at that point. Again, probably more credit to my wife. I think there was a point. The thing that I tell people, even when I have 3 boys and I tell them about college, college isn't about what you learn. It's about learning to learn. right? And it's the ability to understand how to grasp ideas and concepts and go and implement them. And the cool thing that I loved for me for college was that it gave me a stopping point, right? And so I met my wife my senior year of college, and it kind of became this, okay, it's time to grow up, right? And that was a real shift from that rebellious phase, right? To kind of go like, look, I don't want to be this my whole life. I've come from, good people and good family. And I know what I'm supposed, I knew right from wrong, I guess is the best way to put it. And so, I imagine all of us went through some,
definitely.
That, right.
I was resonating with you when you said that.
Yeah. And so I didn't pick up on the coaching probably until I came to KW. Right. So about 7 years ago. But it just became like, I recognize now you're the sum of the people that you surround yourself with. So if you don't come from a world of abundant thinking, right, or you don't come from a world of financial means, you don't necessarily know the people to go talk to, right? You don't know how to surround yourself with those in those circumstances. And so coaches to me became a way to, rather than seeking out someone in the community or a church or something that I might know, a coach became a way of, okay, I've got a relationship with someone. They're financially incentivized to speak with me each week, right? And to really go deep on whatever topic, right? So I found it as a way. So I've got six coaches or so right now for me and my team, because I just find it a great third party to go out and say like, okay, you're one, being in the circle, right? You got so much emotion tied to every decision and everything that it's hard to see it clearly sometimes, right?
Well, I like to describe it too, David, as, every single one of us has blind spots as business owners, and a blind spot by its very definition, you're blind to. Like you can't, it's impossible for you to find your way out. And so the only way that you can identify a blind spot is by someone else identifying that and then just becoming more self-aware about it. And it seems like that's kind of what you're describing. So you make this transition into real estate. Tell me what that looked like. I mean, were you instantly successful? Did you fail a lot? Were you failing forward? What did that look like those first, year or two?
Yeah, I think my story. So I went with when I decided I was getting into real estate and that I had to have this insurance and this security of something. I actually found applied the community next to me where I lived was a new construction community. It was a national home builder that was building it. And I was coming home one day fed up, and I just pulled into the parking lot of the model, and I walked in and I told the girl, I want to do what you're doing. Like, how do I do this? Right. And her name's Hope Brazel. She is an amazing team leader.
I know Hope. Yeah.
Everybody knows Hope. And so that was 17, 18 years ago, right? I pulled in, and Hope happened to be the on-site agent. And so she actually called the sales manager and said, I know this sounds weird, but this guy seems all right, right? Would you be interested in talking to him? When I remember I'd been on so many interviews and they were so horrible that I kind of blew it off, thinking like, this is another junk interview, which maybe spoke to why I didn't have a job I loved, right? And I remember after the first interview, I was like, man, I really, really botched that one, right? I wish that looked like a really good job. And so I wrote thank you notes, just a lot of them, to that sales manager until she gave me a second interview. And that was really my first time as an adult being very intentional and not taking no for an answer, right? And she didn't say no, but they were just slow on the, and so got the interview. I ended up working for that company for 8 years, right? And so that gave me the W-2 safety net, if you will. And had some good success with it, really enjoyed it. Hope left the company after a while and became a team leader at KW. She called me like a great team leader every few months to check in on me. And so when I decided to leave the world of new construction, I thought, I know how to sell real estate. I can do this. I've been really successful at the on-site sales. I made the jump and I went to another brokerage. And Hope loves it when I tell that story because I think it's a testament to a true team leader. She listening to her tell it now is that grinning like, oh, okay, that's fascinating. When I called and told her that I had left the new construction world and went to another brokerage. And it was through that year right there. When I left, I went to another brokerage and I told the broker that I said, I'll give you a year, right? Because we were looking at like opening a brokerage and doing some unique things. And so I said, I didn't really understand. So I said, I'll commit to a year, right? And so I wanted to honor that. Unlike most people getting into real estate, I'd actually saved up, $50,000, and we had 3 babies at home. My wife didn't work, and I felt like, hey, I can do this, right? And it was 2013. So the recession we didn't know it at the time, but it was over. Things were okay. And we made that switch, right? And I remember after about 90 days going to my wife and saying, we've spent all of our savings. We're not selling houses. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. And if we can't get this right in the next 30 days, we both have to go get real jobs. We had mouths to feed, right? And it was that month, we ended up selling 1.6 million that month in real estate. Month 5 and 6 were a little challenging, but it gave us enough of a platform to get forward. And through that, I met with someone at Keller Williams, and they actually bought me a plane ticket to see Gary in Austin that August. And wow. I came back just on fire, right?
Well, let me ask you this, David. Because I think this is something that a lot of agents need help with, because right now, my experience has been, we get into business with a lot of agents, and I try and set a very truthful stage for them. You can come in and you can hit it big, and you need to know what type of real estate market that you're getting into. I think a lot of people just think, oh, it's the easiest time to get into real estate. It's one of the most difficult times, right, for a new agent to negotiate contracts. And there's difficult things, especially with working with buyers, right? And so if they've gone a few months and the savings are dried up and their back's kind of against the wall, and they're just contemplating the next move, like, what was it that flipped in your mind and in your actions that caused you to then close 1.6 million, I believe you said it was, that next month? Like, walk me through that. What did that look like?
Yeah, that became a result of, I did understand from my background in new construction. I didn't know at the time it was called an economic model, but I had discovered through on-site sales that the number of people that I could get to walk through the door versus the number of people that I could get to do a model tour versus the number of people I could get to come sit down at my desk versus the number, I knew there was a math for it. I didn't discover it was called the economic model until I met Gary. And yet I did know that lead generation played a part of it. So I was intentional about that first month, that second month, that third month. And that's really, the thing that's scary, I'm the OP of a couple of market centers, and as new agents coming in, you just don't know what you don't know. And unfortunately, in real estate, you don't realize how fast it's going to come up on you. And you really need those results month 4 and 5 and 6 in order to be able to financially weather it. And yet, in order to get the results in 4, 5, and 6, you had to start doing what was necessary in month 1, 2, and 3. And that's why I think we see this turnover in our industry so much. And where you look at it and go, you either have to find someone that's having success that you can join or be a part of, right? And so thankfully for me, that broker and I, we're still good friends. She helped carry me along some there. I had some lender partners that I've been calling on, some builders that and they just all kind of fell, right? It was the lead generation piece that just kind of clicked, but it wasn't overnight and it wasn't easy, and I think that's the piece that people have to remember is that there's no secret to it. I had somebody tell me the other day, I worked my database for 3 weeks and I got nothing from it. And I said, well, it's like the farmer going out here and planting seeds 3 weeks ago and coming and staring at the dirt going, this doesn't work, right? Let's go plant seeds somewhere else. You have to stay the course. That consistency piece has been a huge theme for me over the years.
You brought up a couple things. What you do today shows up later. We like to say what you do today shows up 90 days from now. And sometimes it's even a little bit longer than that, but staying the course is so important. And then just also being able to, piggyback on some other people's success too, is finding those people that are having some success and really making yourself valuable to them. So you get into real estate and you start having some success. And you're at this one brokerage, you've committed. What did, take me through the rest of the first year? Was it then just exponential, compounding growth? Or did you falter? What happened next?
Yeah, it was hit or miss there for the first 6 months. Again, I was The first year I ended up doing about 7.5 million. And at the time, again, coming from new construction world, we were used to selling, 15, 20, 30 homes a month sometimes, right? And so to me, I had no bearing on if 7.5 was good. I knew based off of the economic environment I was in, that financially it wasn't anything to what I was accustomed to. And so with that, right, just looking up and thinking, we knew there would be a year or two of reduced income, right? However, the pictures, it wasn't that the results changed that gave it to us. It was that we started to kind of understand. I think about it a lot like a college quarterback going to the pros, right? And they talk about how fast the game moves at first, right? Your first year as a pro quarterback or as a pro player, the game just moves so fast. And then that second year, it slows down. And I go like, well, it doesn't really change speed, right? It's always the same speed. And it was the same thing for me in real estate, right? It was that I started to understand it, right? But that also was a result of me being intentional about training classes. And I don't want to say I was intentional about it, but I do think like for what's being provided to a lot of agents today, coming to the classes, listening to webinars, right? Pouring into, developing yourself and your skills, even though you might not know the outcome, I think is super critical. 80% of the stuff you do works if you work it, right? Which means 4 out of 5 times it's going to work if you'll work it. The challenge, you get into real estate early on, that first year, so many people are telling you what you should do. You go over here and do it, and then you hear a new shiny idea over here, and you just end up everywhere. And it's kind of that you don't end up doing anything really well. Through the end of that year, we picked up a builder, which helped a lot, that was doing a few deals in our neighborhood, in our area. And that gave me at least a little bit of consistency, right? And then from that, we started learning how to lead generate, right? I've got over 10,000 hours in open houses, right? Sitting in model homes. And so we found that like I knew how to do open houses. I've been trained by some of the best in the country on how to do professional open houses with model homes on site sales. And so I took that skill and said, well, let's see how that works in a resale environment. And we really fell in love with the fact that at open houses, people were 4 to 6 weeks away from buying something. And we as I built the team out, right, I didn't start the team until early 2014. We made the move to Keller Williams. Hope was really excited. It was my sponsor, right? And it's just been a huge cheerleader for me the entire time. But we made the move to Keller Williams and started the team. I actually came back, and my boys were like 5, 6 years old maybe. And they were doing conditioning at this gymnastics place in town. And there was this one guy that I knew had his real estate license. He was really loud and obnoxious, but the moms just oohed and awed over him, right? They just loved Phil. And I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to go to that guy at the gym and ask him if he wants to start a real estate business. And she was like, you are not. And I was like, yeah. Still to this day, it's the only time I get to look at my wife and say, I told you so. Phil's actually our director of sales now. He's the heartbeat and the pulse of our organization. But literally, we went to lunch, over a beer at lunch at Chili's in about 15 minutes. We were like, yeah, you seem all right. Let's do this. Right. And so
that's exactly how we teach the hiring process too, right? And well, can I pause you for just a second, because what I've already enjoyed about our conversation is those. I have lots of listeners that are not with KW, and that's cool. But inside of KW, we have what we call 6 personal perspectives, and really that's like the cultural pillars, if you will, of our organization. You've already touched on at least 2 of those, and that's committing to self-mastery. And being learning based. And when you put those 2 things together, the powerful outcomes that result from that. And so that's really neat. You also, something that is important is you talk about how when you lead generate, this is a math problem. The economic model is simply a math problem. And that's what this business is. The emotion comes in when you're in the transaction, but prior, the lead generation piece is simply a math problem. And it sometimes amazes me, David, that even agents that are doing 10, 12, 20, $30 million a year in production volume, been in the business for 15 years, still somehow have not made that connection. And it's not speaking down towards them. They just haven't had it positioned that way. And what I've found in consulting top agents like that, when they've come into my world, is that it's such like a relief when they can actually like run their business like that. And so I think that's pretty neat. I wanted to ask you, because particularly in markets across the country right now, we are in, obviously, I would say listing shortage, right? Inventory shortage. And so a lot of new home sales is happening. So if I'm someone who is transitioning from new home sales into resale, and I am good at open houses, are there any points of difference between what you found running open houses for new construction and open houses on the resale side? Any points of differences or things that you had to mix up in your approach?
Well, the beauty of it is in new construction, you've got lots. And so you kind of have this, I don't want to say ample supply, but if you don't like this plan, we've got this plan. Right? In the resale world, you got the house you're standing in. However, what you realize is that you actually have unlimited plans, right? If you go and you do your research ahead of time and know what else is on the market or what's around you in your community. So we would start doing open houses with pinup boards, understand that 97% of people would not buy the house that they just walked through, and kind of said like, hey, based off of a great discovery, which we understand how to do from the new construction world, here's, you go to the problem presentation, you go, here's what I hear you telling me, and here's the type of house I think that you're looking for. It doesn't sound like this one that we just walked through is the right one. Am I right? Yep, you're right. Okay, well, here's some other homes in the area that I think would be a good fit for you. When I get done here today at about 4, would you want to come back around 4:30 and meet me, and I'll take you through a couple of these homes? Right. And so we got so good at that I mean, I knew Friday afternoon that I would have 2 buyers under contract by Sunday evening. Right? Because you just knew, like, now that's changed. Used to, we could say at least 20% of people coming through would not be represented. I'd say it's become a little bit more challenging because we now do launches. So we force everybody to come through the open house at a certain time. A lot of them are now represented. More people have realtors than before. So you have to be a little bit more strategic now. And yet it still works, right? If you're looking for the unrepresented, and you kind of say, like, look, I know of some things on the market. That's really the only difference. Everything else kind of holds true, from, greeting to discovery to product demonstration, if you will, right? The tour of the home, back to, asking for the sale and not identifying objections.
I think that's fantastic advice, which is simply to know the market that is around it. And so you don't just throw up a few directional signs and cross your fingers. You really are becoming, not to use an overused phrase, but I'm going to use it, the local economist of choice, and really knowing the inventory and listening really well to those who are coming into the open house, what they want, and having done that work beforehand. And that's why you need to really think about your open house strategy as just that, a strategy that requires a process and planning so that you can be the best. Now,
well, you went back a minute ago on the economic model, and I was talking to someone earlier, and the models of your business plan, right? I would say, like, I'm amazed that 99% of the industry still doesn't have a written business plan. And so like, if you just do that, you're already in the 1%. Like, you're already that much more successful. You're already a leading expert. And the business plan is the left side of the brain, right? It's the economic model, the lead gen model. But I always feel like it's solvable, right? Like the whole strategy around running a huge business in real estate is a solvable math problem. I'm not trying to put a human on another planet, right? I'm not trying to solve for some disease that we haven't found a cure yet. Like, I'm just running a business that has a clear formula that I can just follow the math on it. So, and that's very left brain. So the only thing really that prevents anyone is you stop and you go like, well, it's either too difficult or I don't like it, right? And that's where I go back to what my mom taught me as watching her hustle and have grit as a child. Is it's like, so what, buttercup, right? Like, if you want to do it, freaking suck it up, right? Like, I don't care if it's hard. My wife says they want to call it fun. They call it fun. That's why they call it work. Right? Get up and go out there and do what you got to do in order to get the job done. Too many people stop at, I don't know, that doesn't sound awesome, or that seems like hard work. And you go like, but you're going to work hard at something. We're all going to get up and work 40 or 50 hours a week. Right? Now, you can do it doing something that someone else has directed you to do, or you can create a path that drives you to a certain result. Your business model is the left side of the brain, but the right side of the brain becomes what I would call the airy fairy stuff, but that I felt that has made a bigger difference or impact on us than anything else. And that's the vision, values, beliefs, perspectives. It's the cultural thread. It's the legacy that you're leaving on people's lives. I found I love working with buyers and sellers. I love developing people. Like I get out of bed in the morning to see other people succeed. Right. And when I found that, like, and that didn't have, I didn't set out going like, yes, I love that. That's what I love about our culture as KW, as the Huffaker Group, as anything, is it became this platform, this opportunity came because I was willing to write a business plan out and execute on the math. And you come back to that open house piece of it, not just the math of the economic model, but to go like, okay, Gary tells us, we did some research a few years ago, right? Like 80% of our business is going to come from 3 or 4 lead sources. So just double down on those. And again, your business plan for listings for us, it's database, it's circle prospecting, which is a part of our open houses, it's internet leads, and it's agent referrals. We just really, we wrote out playbooks, right? We wrote out training mail. Here's how you do it. Here's what you say. Here's what the scripts are. Here's what the conversion rate should be. Here's the follow-up plan, right? Here's what you can expect. Going through all of that to be that intentional about how, like you said, with an open house, we call them launches because I think there's so much more than open houses. We launch a house, right? They all hit the market the same day. We door knock, we prospect, we do 2 open houses on it, all these things. Just being into that, it's back to that business plan, right?
That it's phenomenal, and so much gold in there. So if you didn't pick up on all of it, you need to rewind like 3 or 4 minutes and just listen to that again. David, you've grown a business that is, as I understand, I mean, probably the fastest to 100 million, right? And I want our listeners to know that within just a few years. So talk to us a little bit about scaling, because as you discover that passion of developing people and you really shift your mindset from, I'll say, salesmanship to leadership, what was your experience? How did you continue to quickly scale the processes and systems to support that big of a business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll go back and say probably the biggest lesson I learned. So when I worked, and I know it's funny how we have this conversation, but usually don't revolve around new construction or my builder past. But right before we had our 3rd kid, there was a sales manager position opening up at that company. It's funny in hindsight, you can see why things happen, but at the time, like, you just feel like it just sucks. I remember going on the interview and them asking me, who do you think's the best salesperson on the team? And I remember being somewhat insulted, right? Like, I was like, psh. Like, my ego was so out of whack, right? Like, let's talk about, like, we take way too much credit for what we do, and you have that rug pulled out from under you. And I'll say, like, that's probably the best lesson I learned in life. And it hurt, and it's hard to understand that it's not me that's made this successful. So when I got a chance to restart my world through real estate and building a real estate team, it became, if I build it under the assumption that what I do is the highest and best way to do it, I immediately create a natural ceiling for myself, right? Because I can only expand it to the point that I can influence it. So when I had to back up and go, okay, let's assume that every task that I do, there is someone out there that can do it better, which I realized that I don't do a whole lot of stuff really well. And so it wasn't real hard to find people to do it better. But then became the concept of, okay, well, if that's true, then if I just go and get in business with all of them, then they can go do what they do really well. And that's really where my vision and the alignment of the KW team and the models and everything kind of lined up. And I just said, like, okay, well, let's go out and find really great people to be in business with, right? And so when we built it on things that weren't about me, and I will say, like, I did feel intentional about finding things that were scalable, right? So early on, we had some new construction business and builders in the area. As we continued to grow, we just realized that, like, that was it's not duplicatable, but it's just going to be really cumbersome to try to go to another city, get a builder, give our pitch on why we're so good. They don't know me. My reputation's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just became like So we had to, in fact, my coach at the time had me break out that company into a separate P&L. And we started running the new construction division of the Huffaker Group, completely separate.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, and it was eye-opening for what it did to the P&L because we didn't realize how much money we were spending because the new construction was fairly profitable. So a lot of great lessons in that. But we did say, like, this builder was notorious for switching agents. And towards the end of our relationship with him, we were doing about 100 homes a year with just that one builder. And so I always pushed really hard to keep that less than 20% of our business. I didn't want to do less business with the builder, so I had to go out and find some way to do another 300 or 400 transactions, right? To keep that
just 300 or 400.
Right. And so we just backed up and said, I finally started drinking the Kool-Aid on the database about 5 years ago. It's our biggest lead source and phenomenal return on investment. Open houses I loved. Internet, my background's a little techie, and so I really enjoyed the internet piece of drawing in business and promoting and advertising. And agent referral. So that's kind of the 4 lead sources that we focus on. And so just being really intentional. And as you build it on things like, I can do an open house anywhere, right? Like I had somebody called me the other day and said they were going on a $2 million listing appointment. And the guy asked, like, have you ever sold a home in this neighborhood? And I always think like, man, I can sell the pyramids in Egypt if I do enough research. Like, I don't need to have been there. I don't need to know anything about it, right? As a realtor, the consumer thinks that matters a whole lot. We know that with enough research and the right marketing and tactics, we can sell any home. I think as long as you're looking for lead sources that's duplicatable, then you just go find really great people that support all of those pieces. And I always say, like, real estate's like 52 different steps. So I just needed 52 different people that did one step really, really well. But it was kind of the mindset of it.
I can really appreciate the way that you're framing that. And what I'm hearing fundamentally is that scaling ultimately comes down to people. We can have all the tools, we can have the resources, we can have the models. And until we have the right person in the right seat who's really good at that 1 or 2 things, then we may still scale, but we may not scale as quickly.
And man, what an interesting challenge to solve that, right?
Certainly. And we could spend probably 3 or 4 episodes just talking about that.
Yeah, none of us got into this business to lead people, right? And so that's what I always think, like, it's the only business where you can go from being a salesperson to being a CEO. And that takes there's a lot of learning, at least for me, right? Again, I'm not the best at everything. And so what we did, I'll tell you, when you draw out the 3L triangle, the leads, listings, and leverage, I think as a business owner, you start to understand how you develop leads, right? That becomes a process. I used to coach with Tony DeCello, and we talk about, like, the leads and the listings or the agreement side of the triangle are scalable, right? Once you kind of grasp it, you know how to do it and make it bigger. The leverage piece becomes the real challenge, right? And it's this ongoing learning. And I actually take the 3L triangle and I draw it as a prism, right? And if you draw it as a 3-dimensional shape, you get 3 additional legs. I say they're kind of the 3 hidden legs of building a company. As you get there, it becomes leadership, longevity, and legacy. And so you really kind of look at this and go, how do I develop my leadership skills? Right? How do I be a better leader for these people? How do I get up today and make sure that I grow a world large enough that they can achieve their goals without leaving my ecosystem? Right? How do I do it through shifting markets? That longevity piece. How do I do it through COVID? How do I do it through short sales, through REOs and things like that? Right? And then the last piece, legacy. Why am I doing this? Right? What impact am I having on my community? What impact am I having on these people's lives? What impact am I having on my children and the people that allow me to be a part of their world? And to me, like, that gets so fun to solve, and you just keep failing forward with it, right?
Definitely. Oh man, I got literal chills because that's been something that's like in my head, and I've positioned it different ways. The prism, the 3L becoming a prism, and you said again it was leadership, longevity, and legacy. Guys, like, if you're listening, pull the car over and write that down. It's leads, listings, leverage, leadership, longevity, and legacy. That is gold.
Some cool graphic we can draw, like one light coming in, a bunch of lights coming out. Right? There's some
Let's do it.
That some marketing mind can put to that.
I was just gonna say, run and trademark it really quick. At least take a picture and scribble it onto a napkin, because that's good. That's making it into MREA 3. So anyway, David, there is a couple different directions that I feel like we could bring this. I almost traveled down the path of, how do you get into relationship and build, or with builders, because that's something that I know as I consult dozens and dozens of agents, they're asking me about. But instead, I want to take it because, lately I've been journaling and writing and just really thinking about the teams inside of my organization and the teams that are out there as I go and get to speak and train with other regions inside our company, and I just think about that leadership piece and showing appreciation, like longevity, and retention of your people. And I think that so many leaders, myself included, when we're scaling any type of company, retaining our top people, creating a world that's big enough for them to stay in long term is really difficult. And so my question for you is simply like, along the lines and the subject of retaining team members and pouring in and creating that big world, what have you learned and what advice would you give to other people about doing that?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you the answer is the one I hate as an OP, right? And it's the one you expect, right? One piece of it is culture, right? And we talk about the retention of agents within a market center. And if your culture is correct, that culture is too broad-based, right? It's difficult to go out and duplicate culture because it's different for all of us. And so I think it has to be cultural for that person. The biggest thing I think that's helped us, especially from a team standpoint, even as an OP, is it's super simple. And it's kind of like, when I go and talk to my pastor, I want him to give me this epiphany on how the world works. And it's just so basic, his answer. I'm like, well, there's no sparkle around any of that. And so it's kind of the same thing here, right? Like it's honestly making it a true win-win. Like when people join our organization, we understand or tell them like, we're here to help you build a business. Right? Like it's your business. We are I do it a lot like State Farm. So the Huffaker Group is State Farm. Our agents are the local State Farm agent, right? People do business with their local State Farm agent because of the relationship they have with that agent. They're just backed by leverage and a powerful brand.
You used the word platform earlier, and that's exactly the word I'd say.
Yeah, we felt at that early on. And so, but like we let people know when you join our company, the business you create, you take it with you. I'm not here to hold, that's not growing my world, right? Like I always tease them, I'm like, I don't sell your mom's house after you leave anyways, right? It's that win-win scenario that when someone truly sees it as a win-win, right? When they win, when you win and vice versa, they don't necessarily have any desire to leave. I was shocked. Several of our people I've interviewed and said, man, you could go out and, be my biggest competitor, right? You could be one of our toughest competitors. And why are you still here, right? And they've just said, like, it's the leverage, it's the helping them build a world. Not everybody is after every last penny. It's very rarely about the money, right? It's about the quality of life that you can help someone else grow and provide. And so I love seeing them buy their boats and put their kids in the schools they want and, take their vacations. And it's that piece of it where they get this balance of quality of life. And so if it's a team, you're directly helping impact that. If it's a market center or someone else, you're directly helping them create that environment. And so I think as long as we're doing that, that retention piece is there. The only caveat I'll put on that is that, it's our job to make them thirsty, not our job to make them drink. Right? Definitely. Like I can't want it more than they want it. Right. And that's the piece I've had to come to terms with as a business owner, is that sometimes I just want it for them more than they want it.
Definitely. And I think even that's a piece of leadership, tapping into what it truly is, even before we get into business with someone, to make sure that there's alignment there. And then the consistency of following them on their growth path and making sure that it hasn't shifted or moved, right?
Yeah. And you use a word there that's really good, the growth path, right? People seeing a vision of where they can go. It's not necessarily your job to worry about how hard that is or what it would take to get there. Ben Kinney turned me on to that idea a few years ago of having a growth path for the agents in your organization. They just need to see that there's somewhere for them to go, right? No one wants to go work somewhere where they feel like they're limited in their ability to grow. And so whatever that looks like, whoever that is in your organization, having that written plan and having that conversation with them, not for your sake, but to say, like, what does your world look like when you get to here? Right? What's important in your world that happens? Like, how do we help that happen for you? As long as I know what that is and I can pour into them and help them to achieve it, that's a good relationship, right? That's a win-win.
Like you said a couple minutes ago, it's very rarely about the money. And I think as type A business owners, we sometimes go straight there. Well, let's solve that math problem. Let's figure out what it is. And very often it's simply about that time, that consistency, that appreciation that really elevates the experience of our customers as leaders, which are our people, right? So, David, I could talk to you literally for hours, just because we share a name, but right. Because this has just been really good content and a really good discussion for me. I've grown from this, but I want to transition us into the last segment of our show, which is 3, 2, 1 action. It's the same 3 questions we ask every single guest. Are you nervous?
Anticipating, like, what is this going to be? Like, so exciting.
I love not sharing them beforehand either, because it's not scary whatsoever. So the first question is, who is the most influential person on your business?
One person.
One. We have a lot of people that cheat and try and slip 2 in, but
yeah. I was about to do that because there's a most obvious answer, so I'm not going to go with him. I would say my MAPS coach, Sajid, right? Especially over the last 2 years. Getting me to break out the P&L from the new construction, getting me to think bigger, getting me to go out and do a 5-year vision. What does it look like to get to 5,000 houses? 2020 was our best year ever, and we have already surpassed those numbers in the first 6 months of 2021. And that's
congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. That's through him putting me in position to make me think bigger, right? So I'd say, just asking the right questions was awesome for me.
That's awesome. And it circles right back to how we started this show, the importance of coaching and the impact that someone else can have on your business, just looking in and then holding someone accountable. Question number 2, what's the most influential book on your business?
Extreme Ownership. Love that one. I know it's been a few years since it came out. It's awesome on audiobook. If you hadn't heard it, it has like the bombs going off in the background and stuff. But
it's pretty intense.
Again, I mean, my 3 non-negotiables are integrity, discipline, and ownership. And it comes from how I was raised and just that expectation that, like, if in raising 3 boys, it's funny how many times I look at one of them and one of them's like, so-and-so did this to me. And I'm like, you just gave them all the power. Right? Like, own the situation. I get you couldn't have maybe controlled it, but own the situation and think about what you can do from this point forward. I think our whole society could benefit from, just understanding that if we own the situation, then we have control on navigating it out.
Awesome. And the third and final question, this is the All In podcast, where we challenge our listeners to take immediate action so they can push the chips all in on their life and business. If there was one piece of advice that you would give to the agent listening to this today, how they could move the needle forward on their business, what advice would you give?
I'm going to say, because it's relevant to where I've been the last few weeks, I just left Austin for a great mastermind a couple of weeks ago. And we did an exercise called our 10-year, a letter to ourselves 10 years from now. And the thing that I love about it, from like, if you're going all in on your business right now, is that it forces you to focus. Like, go sit down for 30 minutes or an hour and genuinely write a letter to yourself 10 years from now on what you would tell yourself now, right? Like, what would it look like? Where are you in life, right? Like, write down your age, write down your kid's age, write down your spouse's age, write down, because you think it's going to be about business. And it ends up being, for the most of us, for almost every one of us in that room, it was about being present in our lives for all perspectives. Right? For being with our children, and I walked away from that going, I've written 4 million business plans. It feels like. How many great dad plans have I written now? Right? How many how to be an awesome husband plan have I written now? And when you're succeeding through that, right, the business, those pieces are so critical to a successful business, right? It's a holistic approach to growing a successful business. having that white space, all the people I coach, it's that 2 to 3 hours a week of white space that you are just hyper focused on thinking about the business, because subliminally, you're going to look up a year from now, if you do that, and you're going to have an opportunity to present itself, and you're going to be able to act quicker because you've actually already pre-thought about what you would do in that situation or something similar to it, right? Your subconscious just somehow manifests it, and you just end up in this position where you can make decisions so fast. All of that can come from just taking that white space and focusing on it.
That's so good. And I do believe that that's not just going to be something that goes in one ear and out the other ear. I want you guys to take action on that right now. David, I'm so grateful for you spending some time with us. And I already have like 6 other episodes queued up with you. We're going on the road and we are teaching the 6 L's market awesome, centers. So I hope that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So if our listeners want to connect with you again, hear any more of your content, what's the best place for them to find more of David Huffaker?
Yeah, so you can go to the huffakergroup.com. There's a section on there for resources on how to get in touch with us. Or, I mean, look, I'm pretty accessible. I'm pretty reachable. David at the huffakergroup.com, like email me, like I'm always happy to chat and answer questions and anything I can do. I get energy from sharing it. And you know this, right? Through this, I've learned as much from you as hopefully I was able to provide back. And so it's always a growth experience.
Well, you definitely did, and it was a fun time. I really appreciate it. Guys, that is a wrap on another episode of the All In podcast. Like I always say, go out and play all in.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play all in.